Hey, everybody, and welcome to this episode of Beyond Day One. I'm David, and we're here to discuss all things Gen Z and helping those who lead that generation. We've been talking over the last couple of weeks about a conglomerate of things. It seems like we started off talking about professionalism, but then we jumped off and took a rabbit trail into authenticity, and then we ran around and took another rabbit trail into reading the room. Well, these aren't all disparate parts, they're all pieces to the same puzzle. And that puzzle is how you show up at work. So tonight we're going to kind of wrap those things up and hopefully put it in a nice bow for you as we get ready to move on to the next thing we want to talk about. Well, as you typically know, I'm never alone. I've always got some help with me. And tonight I've got Phillip, I've got Ryan, and as always, I've got Gen Z John with us to help us to have this conversation. So, as I said, we've been talking about professionalism, authenticity, and reading the room. And I've really enjoyed some parts of our conversation. Guys, just to spread it around a little bit, is there a particular thing that stood out to you over the last couple of weeks that we've talked about that was meaningful to you?
I think one of the big things that I thought would be very helpful to Gen Z, especially, is that phrase situational awareness. I know we talked about it several times, just in terms of like reading the room and understanding interpersonal relationships at work. Situational awareness is a huge key because it's all about being able to assess your environment on the fly and then adjusting as necessary to that environment. So,
Oh, that's good, Phillip. How about you, Ryan?
I would just say just how valuable it is to read the room, how it really just helps you personally move forward in a career and in an organization, but also helps others as well. So it's very valuable.
How about you, John?
I feel like I want to add a PSA that professionalism and being able to read the room and everything is not necessarily supposed to, conceal your authenticity. It's you can still be yourself and still be authentic and still practice like a healthy amount of professionalism and being able to just be compatible with everybody else in the workplace. You're not trying to hide who you are. You're just trying to hide. No, I can't say hide, but you're just trying to reveal the best parts of yourself in the workplace.
Yeah, I love that, John. When we think about it, another way to consider it is like this: professionalism is how others experience you, authenticity is who you really are. And then reading the room is kind of the bridge between the two because the reading the room helps you to know how much, which parts of yourself to unleash when. But Philip, you just mentioned something a little bit ago, and excuse me if I missed the paraphrase, but again, authenticity is not your opportunity to go nuts. Talk about that for just a second.
yeah, it seems like it's kind of a popular theme, especially among Gen Z, is this idea of authenticity, but that it can border over into not having good discretion, because not everything needs to be put out on Front Street, as we would say. There's a such thing as oversharing. And while the intention may be to come across as relatable and I'm just like, I'm real, I'm this and that, it can actually be a little bit jarring for some people. They're not ready maybe to handle all the business of your life, so you have to exercise some discretion. And I think that's a huge part of reading the room is knowing what parts of you to reveal at different, or your personality, your character, even past experiences you've had, things like that. Not everybody's ready to hear some of the stuff, that you might, maybe share in a way that probably wasn't wise for the moment, let's say. But just a phrase I had read earlier: authenticity does not mean unfiltered. And I thought that was a good little nugget to
there
bring
it
out.
is. That's it. I didn't think we said this when we talked about authenticity, but one thing I would tell you is being authentic and sharing your personal business are not the same thing.
There you go.
I
Yes.
do not recommend that you share a bunch of private personal information in the workplace about yourself. And we live in a world that's way too open about some things. So who you slept with, this kind of thing, that all that kind of stuff, that does not belong in the workplace. And everybody shouldn't know certain things about you. That should be for your close friends. Guys, I want to be honest with you, and I want to tell you, it's not always easy to get it right, and that's because just this weekend I screwed it up. I was trying to be authentically me, and I'm working with a new group at my church, and this happens to be a group of young adults, or really high school freshmen, and so I said to them, guys, I know I'm older. And one of the kids said, "You don't look a day over 20." And I responded, and I couldn't believe I said this. It just came out of my mouth. I said, "Your mother is a very kind woman." And I knew I knew what I meant by that. You were raised well for you to know to say something kind like that to me. But then the looks around the room were like, did he just talk about his mom? And I'm like, no, it wasn't like that at all. So I literally, look, you guys, I'm 54 years old, and I'm still taking opportunities to put my foot in my mouth at some least opportune moments. So I know I've got to maybe win that kid back onto the right side of things. So I got to work on that. Why do I tell you this horrible story? It's because that if you do mess up and you're being authentic and professionalism and reading the room and you miss it, while it could be detrimental to you, it doesn't have to stay detrimental to you. It just means that you, like I am about to have to, am going to have to work a little harder to win over the trust of some of the people in that room because I put my foot in my mouth. And while it was funny, while it happened, I felt really bad because I realized that I was trying to make a good impression and made a completely different impression than the one that I intended to. So, but you can win and you can come back. So as we kind of wrap up this series, I think I want to talk about a few tips that we can give you to help you in this. One of the things that I want to start with is I want to take us back to where we were last week and talk about the 10-second scan. That 10-second scan, could be a difference maker. However, as I can tell you, I can scan the room for 10 seconds and still put my foot in my mouth. But I didn't it wasn't in there long. I got back on track, and I did win some of them back over later on in the night through other parts of our conversation. So that 10-second scan is an important piece of the puzzle. And by the way, I've created a guide for you. If you just look at the link to the 10-second scan in the description below, you'll see that there's a guide to a link. There's a link to a guide there to give you a resource to help you to remember help you to learn and know the steps for that. You guys, what are some other tips that you might give as we kind of wrap this series up for our listeners?
I want to kind of point out there, generally speaking, when it comes to authenticity, it wouldn't hurt to just get to know yourself. I know this sounds kind of goofy, but I think oftentimes what I mean by that is that you don't really, and sometimes you don't understand fully your strengths and your weaknesses. I've come to learn a lot about myself when I'm put into a leadership position, and I've had countless moments where I'm having a team meeting or whatever and pulled everybody together. And if I feel like I'm losing the crowd, or if I feel like I forgot the script and I forgot the notes that I needed to touch base on, I start rambling. I start getting nervous. I start saying stuff that just doesn't matter. And I'm starting to learn these things about myself. And I'm realizing that it wouldn't hurt to take a little bit of time to just learn your strengths, learn your weaknesses, and just kind of bounce off of that and see, see maybe if that can give you a different approach on how you handle a group of people. It might actually give you a whole new perspective, and you never know.
Yeah, and there's some great tools out there to help you. There's strength finders out there that you can do online. There's a great profile called Wired That Way. If you've ever done some of the other personality trait pieces, they basically are talking about strengths and weaknesses. We know that we're not completely defined by all of these things, but we can learn some things about ourselves through these tools.
Very good.
How about you, Ryan, Phillip? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, I would just say a good thing that you can do to read the room is to pause before you react. And it may be natural for you to be quick to snap or quick to say something or to sometimes stick your foot in your mouth. But learning to just take a breath before you say something and just thinking, is this the right time or the appropriate thing to say in the moment? That's not any shade at David. I didn't see your face.
I wish I had taken that pause. I wish I had.
But a lot of times, especially if you feel insecure or uncomfortable in the moment, you want to sometimes, well, this is my reaction anyway, and I think some people can relate to this. You want to be the first to say something. But oftentimes, to really allow your professionalism to shine through, it's best not to say anything. Sometimes to pause before you say anything at all. And that's not to say that you have to be quiet and mouse back and not say anything, because then you may be overlooked when you have something brilliant to say. So it's not to say just be quiet all the time, but just to take that little pause, that breath, and think through. Maybe you want to say something, but instead of saying that thing, phrase it in a question. So that pause will allow you to transition, phrase it as a question, and then go on. So that, the old saying, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason.
That's great.
That's good, Ryan. How about you, Phillip?
I would just say, ask yourself the question, like, especially if you're in those environments where, there's an opportunity possibly to contribute to a conversation or whatever the case is, kind of have this in your mind, like, does what I'm about to do or say, does it reflect my best professional self? Is that, am I putting my best foot forward in that regard? That can probably prevent you from a lot of a lot of blunders if you do that. And so I want to put that out there.
That's great, Phillip. I'll give you one last one, is seek feedback from someone somebody in that room, especially if you feel comfortable with the supervisor or your boss. Ask them for feedback. When you've had a meeting or you've had some communication go out or anything like that, ask them, how did I do with that communication? Did I cover everything well? Is there something you might recommend that I do a little differently next time? Getting that feedback, number one, it shows that you're open to feedback, that you're looking to improve yourself. And it makes it very clear to them, that's somebody who's trying to make a move, trying to do something a little different than maybe others are doing. And they acknowledge that, and you'll be surprised the number of people who remember down the road that you were one who came and sought feedback. And remember, none of us are perfect. I can tell you other stories about times where I've put my foot in my mouth. But you know what? We all can get help to turn the story around. Until next time.